Let's welcome our guest host today. Our guest host for the next 3 hours is Nasra Omar Bwana. She is a digital curator, a researcher, an author. She runs a website called historia.com. It's a site that takes a deep dive into the history of Kenya's coast. And on that website, she curates conversations on the same. Nasra, karibu sana to the show. Welcome and thank you very much for joining us.
Asante sana, nimekaribia, and thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to how deep we will dive today here.
You want us to go deep?
Deep.
Okay.
Ocean deep.
Wow.
Okay, we will do that. Tell us about historia.com and what you do.
So Historia is a platform, it's a digital platform right now that's evolved into a community whereby we look at the history and culture of the East African coast because it's a unique space. It has a long history. If you look at the ruins, physical ruins in Kenya as a country, the oldest and the earliest are those found in the coast. So the first people settled there, but there's very little known or shared to everybody else. So that's what we are focusing on. Looking at our past and also connecting it to our present. Why are we the way we are today? What has made, because it just doesn't happen. We wake up and all of a sudden we're doing things a certain way. It's something that has a culture that has been developed over time and space. So now we're trying to explain that to the people because also we know the Kenyan syllabus, no shade to the people doing it right now. It's not doing justice to the people of Kenya themselves because it's not like it's designed for us to know us about ourselves.
So it's a teaching role, sharing information and sharing in terms of now how people in the present can connect to the past in order to help for the future. Would you say that you've been able to find things that have actually helped people to then understand their current existence?
Yes. The one thing is helping people understand who they are. If you don't know who you are, then you cease to exist. And so that has been the biggest achievement at the moment, is helping solve an identity crisis that's happening, especially in the Kenyan coast. To the point that people don't even know that Swahilis are from Kenya. Like, we grew up knowing Swahilis are a mixture of Arabs and Africans. And just telling people that changes the mindset on how they interact with the country and how the country interacts with them and so on and so forth. And also one more thing is that it's not just connecting the past to the present. We're also trying to archive things for the future. Because if we don't start recording it now, if we don't start saving it now, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, 100 years down the line, nobody's going to know who we are, what we are, and where we are. Yeah.
Say something again. Swahilis, Kenyan coast, Arabs. What did you say?
Can I start with a story?
Yes.
I was sitting in class 6, primary school. And the teacher goes like, Swahilis are a mixture of Arabs and Africans. The Arabs came and they mixed. And that was the first time I was hearing of that story. Because growing up, I always knew a Swahili is an African. It's somebody who is been on the East African coast for centuries. So now the syllabus told me that I am not African anymore, or I am half African. And with research and everything, we've come to realize where that narrative came from, because it goes into a space of race science and how the colonizers decided to segregate the community so that they could benefit from kugawanya watu.
Divide and rule.
Right. And also to the point that the Western mindset never thought an African could be a certain way. Didn't think an African could be civilized. And so when they came and they found this society thriving for years, for centuries, they're like, you know what? There's no way this can be Africans. This has to be foreign because Africans are uncouth. Africans are uncivilized. Hawajui kujipanga.
Consider for a second that perhaps, even as what you're saying may be true, the opposite could also bear relevance in this sense. If you want to subjugate a people and you want to rule over them, do you rule over them by encouraging them to believe the reality of their existence, or do you look for a narrative that destroys the very premise and the strength on which they build their community? People don't attack units or entities that they consider harmless. No. You use force against an entity that is a threat to you.
Indeed.
It interferes with the process that you have in mind or what you'd like to put in place. So you go about systematically ensuring that you diminish it and you demolish it. So that you can then institute
What you want.
Yes.
You've said it. We can even wrap up the show and we're done.
We're done.
And come back tomorrow. I think I like that.
But that's it. When something is a threat, you fight it. And you show that it's nothing, or you confuse them to the point where right now there's a big identity crisis in the coast. Because I enter here, a room in Nairobi, I'm told, oh, where's in Kenya? You're not Kenyan.
Is that something that is
Who says that?
happening right now?
Right now.
Who says that to you? Who
Any-
says that to anybody who comes from the coast and says you're actually not you're not Kenyan?
You know, the biggest person who says this is the Kenyan government. The way I have to prove my Kenyanness is 5 to 10 times more than any other person in this country. From getting my ID to getting my passport, the requirements that there have been set for people of the coast and even the Somali community, you wouldn't imagine.
Okay, Nasra, let's split this now. I mean, because even as it may sound uncouth, because of the way you look, right, the color of your skin, there are other people from the coast who don't look like you, but they're from the coast. So are we splitting things here and saying there are people from the coast who look a certain way that are feeling disenfranchised because of the way they look? So it's not everybody from the coast, but it's everybody, according to you now, who looks a certain way.
Certain tribes
Who
in the
looks-
coast.
Certain tribes in the coast.
Okay.
And more specifically, the Muslim communities in the coast.
Okay.
Very specifically. More so like border communities, like the Bajuni community. But the moment you have a Muslim name, life in this country is different. That's the reality. The things that I am able to access, and this may be harsh to place on the country, but it's also the truth. There's a sense of Islamophobia. It's been exacerbated by terrorism, the attacks that have been happening lately, but it goes back historically to a point when the missionaries came to Kenya to do what they know how to do best. The biggest fear they had was the spread of Islam. So they ended up fighting through policy, to the point they didn't want to use Kiswahili to spread Christianity because they said Kiswahili is related to Islam. So if you use this, we're promoting Islam. And that ended up being deeply ingrained in the country without us realizing it. The only thing that we can say saved or gave the Muslims a space or a voice is something, the protectorate that we had from the coast, the 10-mile strip. The 10-mile strip was given to Kenya, the Kenyan colony, by the Sultan of Zanzibar. And he put it in when they signed the documents that you have to cater to the needs of the community, the Muslim community, the Qadhi's court, that was signed from the very beginning. And if that was not there, I feel like that would have been lost. So you're living in a country that has been designed in a way that not to support Muslims as much. And the Muslims seems like the other, to the point that now we want to remove the Qadhi's court because it's like, why are these people getting benefits?
Now we want to remove the Qadhi's courts?
Yes, people are fighting to get that out of
Who's
the
now we
Constitution.
want to remove? Who is we? Now we want to remove
We,
the
when I
Qadhi's
say
courts.
we, I will speak as
The reason I'm
Kenyan.
pushing back like this is because there are very many things that are coming out in this conversation, and I'd like us to actually go into the practical of it, right? With the practical experiences. So let's start with that Qadhi's court. Who wants to remove the Qadhi's court?
Nasra, let me just chime in here. Even at the time when we were putting into place our constitution, that's where the biggest fight actually began. There are people who didn't want the issue of the Qadhi's court
Yes.
in our constitution.
In the constitution.
Yes, there are people who didn't want the Qadhi's court in the
Yes.
constitution.
So now, who is this that wants the Qadhi's court out now?
The same people.
Who is this people? Who are these people? In the 2010, in the campaign for the Constitution, I remember the most vocal against the inclusion of the Catholic courts in the Constitution were the Christians. All right? Sections
Were
of
the
the
people
Christian
who claim to represent the
sections
Christian
of Christian
view?
leadership
Yes.
campaigned and said, if you include the Catholic courts in the Constitution, then you are giving one religion advantage over others because you're directly mentioning this particular one. And there was a whole, conversation and pushback on this is not just about the Muslim, it's about the way of doing things. So people passed the Constitution. So who is it now that wants to remove the Catholic courts? And wants to remove it from where? Is it from the Constitution? Is it saying abolish Catholic courts altogether?
It's the same people. You see, it's not that when the Constitution was passed, they were now okay with it being there. The Constitution passed, but it still made certain groups, and it's not everybody, but some of the most vocal are not happy with it.
Okay, so what is it that has happened lately? Like, give examples of activities that would indicate that there's a push to abolish the Catholic courts.
There's conversations, and it always starts with conversations.
Where are these conversations happening?
Online, in press statements.
Whose press statements?
I don't want to mention specifics.
Nasra, I'm going to assist you here.
Please do.
When the 844 system came into being and we're talking about the issue of sex education in schools, they came about it and spoke vociferously against it.
Yes.
Because where they come from, they were the anti-abortion group. They had a certain perspective and a certain position that they took vis-a-vis these issues to do with life, vis-a-vis things to do with religion.
Yes.
But if you look at their position as Americans, and if you look at our position as Kenyans, what they were presenting to us was something that was alien to us. And why I say alien is because for as long as this country has been in existence, the religious feuds and difficulties that the Americans may have faced other people, we didn't have it in Kenya. People lived alongside each other, peaceful. We were okay with each other's religions.
Yep.
Until that concept was introduced, and then suddenly people started looking at each other as strangers. And yet all along they're looking at each other just as brothers and sisters.
Okay. So I'm looking for the nuances and where they're coming from. You see, when you talk about the pro-life movement, they actually come out openly and they issue statements and say, for example, the bill by Senator Susan Keheka, there are people who came out openly to say, I'm opposed to this because of 1, 2, 3, and the other. In 2010, there are people who came out to talk about why they were opposing the Constitution. And they said, those who had a reason about Catholic courts, they came out to say it. Since 2010, or lately, as you're saying, that's what I want to hear. What is it that has happened lately? Are you saying it's a press? There was a public statement by such and certain leader? Is it meetings that are happening behind closed doors? Because this is not a small thing, CT. When you say that there's now a new push to remove Catholic
why don't
courts,
I just...
Are we saying that the rumblings...
And where are they?
Are we saying that the rumblings never died?
I'm
that they
saying
still
they didn't-
continue to be spoken of?
Not only did
whether
they
it
not
was
die.
in certain communities, certain areas, whether people still had the conversation that we are not comfortable with this the way it was, that those rumblings are still taking place. Are we saying that they have not come out in the open glaringly like they had in 2010, for example? Then they've not come out glaringly to say that, look, it's still in the Constitution. We don't want it anymore. It has not come out, but the conversations are being had.
Look, Eric has asked a question and I'm going to respond to it. If you look at 2011 and the issues around it, the bombing of the Twin Towers was blamed on Islamic terrorists. Okay? The Patriot Act came in, and a season of marginalization for anyone who was Muslim, had a Muslim's name, began. People were profiled. Now, it gave fodder to even more people who were already inclined to a narrative that was anti-Muslim. Because they could say, you see, this is what we've been saying all along. See, these. Now, it isn't a narrative that has died. It is a narrative that keeps coming up. There are times when it evens out, it never really dies. And I'm saying that the influence of certain groupings within the US, especially those who have an affiliation towards the Christian faith and who are evangelistic in nature, that influence is not just in the donation and the financial help they give, but also in the narrative that they preach. That is what I am saying.
And I hear you. I'm just seeking
The word is, it's
the
not
direct
that
application of
there's
that.
no new, it's not a new push. It's not a new thing that's happening. It's, as CT has said, it's something that has always been there, and it will come. And even with this BBI, somehow you will see the conversation at some point. Somebody will bring it up somewhere. it will appear. Because for those of us who live by the Qadhi's court, we hear it more than you. Because it directly affects us. And it's the same people who are not comfortable with it last time are still not comfortable with it.
Okay. And you don't just expect that to wake up and switch off, just because
Exactly.
it passed, that, okay, yeah, it passed, so, okay, now I'm comfortable.
Yes, but at the same time, we hope for understanding.
Okay.
If we can live
How
in
do we get to that understanding?
You see, if you look at literature that has been written, even just post 2011, is the portrayal of Islam as a violent religion, and which it isn't. Now, those who subscribe to that particular faith then have this difficult task of trying to present and say, look, folks, why don't you look at any religion around the world and you will find that every religion has extremists. So we are not unique in that sense.
Yes.
Now, because of that, look again around the world and look at people who subscribe to this faith and how they go about their business. They are just like everybody else. There's nothing untoward about what they do. What am I saying, Eric? I am saying that if you're a minority, and the Muslim community is a minority, you are very likely to feel the sharp needle of discrimination simply because of the historical factors and other things that have nothing to do with what you have done, but the larger brotherhood that you subscribe to or the sisterhood that you subscribe to, if they face a certain focus, so will you, even if you are not in that direct line of fire.
Okay.
Yes.
The reason why I've pushed on this one is because the line that Nasra you've taken was there's sort of deliberate marginalization. In other cases, not deliberate, but it just happens. Historically, it has been carried on, and it becomes like it's normalized marginalization of certain groups of people, especially from the coast. Talk about certain tribes, just because you're going to apply for an ID and how you look, and because you're Muslim, then you go through a more rigorous process of getting that. And that has happened in government offices. So that's very clear. It's government office, you've gone for an ID, then what somebody else from the same coast is going through and what you're going through are different. Why I picked up on the issue of the Qadhi court is because it was going on that same line. It was like, this is a national sanctioned move to try and purge on the Qadhi courts. And I'm like, wait a minute. How did this, at what point, where was I when this became a state project? That's why I'm asking that.
But Eric, consider if you were a Muslim and you heard, for instance, that there are people who do not wish there to be a presence or a mention or a position of the Qadhi's courts in our constitution, what would you feel? It becomes personal. We are being marginalized. That's what you would feel.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
This is not dissimilar. When South Africa got their independence, there were discussions about the white community and their position in this new government, which was predominantly black. And there was a small issue of what if they would like to have their own state, meaning an independent state. It was debated at great length. Clearer, wiser minds prevailed and said, look, don't shut that door completely. Don't shut it. Let it be a conversation that can continue. No one has ever seceded. No one has ever moved away. Why? Because the door was never shut. So you live in the knowledge that should I think that this is, we want self-determination, I have an opportunity. If you shut it, you then bring in a whole new discussion of antagonism, which didn't exist to begin with.
Nasra, if we could ask the question, then why, just going back and trying to, because obviously history is one of the things that we're looking at here. So why do we still have today that present thought that the coastal people are not part of Kenya? Why is that the issue? Even with all the talks and the drives that we've had of bringing the country together, unification, etc., etc., why is there still that thing that shows that, or that would be the perception that the coastal people are not part of Kenya? Why is it still there? And is it a reality?
It is a reality. And the biggest thing from where we stand is because the coast is different. The culture is different. And because the culture does not align or match with that of the rest of the country, already it feels like these are totally different community. And the fact that the people of the coast have to ascribe to systems that were not designed for the people of the coast, that were not designed for their culture, that were not designed for their practices, then the clash is what ends up feeling like or looking like this is a different country.
So is it the people of the coast who have said they're different and want to remove themselves, or is it a perception from the rest of the country saying you are different?
It's a mix of both.
Who's spinning it?
It's a mix of both. The people of the coast are different. And okay, when let me specify, because the coast is majority Muslim. Okay, not majority, but the culture is, most of it is based on an Islamic culture that now has been ingrained into everyday practice of almost everybody. Not to
Say lower coast.
lower, but upper as well.
Upper has a very strong Christian presence. That is what I'm getting at.
I would
The
say in
Islamic
mid-
presence exists. But you see, again, this is now where Upper is actually Taita Taveta. Okay?
Okay.
That is it. I'm
Okay.
not talking. Kwale
Because
is
I had
not-
Shika
no,
Lamu as upper.
lower.
That's why.
Kwale,
So the coastal strip.
yes, Kwale,
The strip.
Mombasa,
Okay.
Kilifi, Tana River, Lamu, lower.
Okay.
That is
I'll-
my
I
definition.
will. I'll
Hold that thought then, Nasra. So we take a break at this point and then we come back and you continue that. You're telling us how different the coast is and the people of the coast and historically what it is that they've been feeling, all right? 26 minutes after 7, this is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's the Situation Room. We are on Spice FM, online and on KTN Home. Our guest host today is Nasra Omar Bwana, digital curator, researcher, and author. She runs Historia.com. This is Historia with a double I. H-double-I, Storia with a Y. .com.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Talking about the economic disparities and marginalization on the Kenya coast from a historical perspective. And that's where you were, Nasra. You were giving us that historical perspective, saying the coastal people are different.
How different? How's the difference? The difference is in the culture and in the practice. And also the difference is in the way of life that the people of the coast have based on the proximity to the ocean. And as CT clarified, we're talking about the 10-mile strip specifically,
Okay.
or the area closest to the ocean. And the thing with most of the people who are there, majority, the Swahilis, it is a culture that is African, but deeply connected with Islam. So even the misemo that you hear from Kiswahili, haski la mwadhini wala la mteka maji msikitini, it's really connected to the religion.
Yeah.
And the religion of Islam is not just worship, it's a way of life. It's how you eat, it's how you work, it's how you conduct your business. It's to the point we saw how the late Yusuf Haji was buried, very different, because that's part of the practice. And so your outlook on things and how you conduct relationships with people is determined by that.
But isn't it the practice the world over, for example? Things like this are just not peculiar to the coast.
To the coast.
There are ways in which people practice religion across the world. The country I come from, Muslims practice the same way. So that's what I'm asking. There must be something else that is peculiar that we would then say is separating people or giving them the perception that they're not part of the country.
But in describing this, we're talking about in Kenya.
Okay, I understood.
In Kenya, it's different from the rest of the country. Somebody from the coast might be closer connected to somebody in Comoros because of the cultural practices that we have, because of the language that we speak. I might have more in common with an Indian Muslim based in Kerala or somewhere because of the practices that we have. And the day, like how we conduct business,
So
how we do everything.
you identify with a culture that is different from that which is in Kenya.
Kind of.
Why do you feel that you are marginalized?
Why do I feel that I'm marginalized?
Why do you feel that the people who subscribe to your faith and people who belong to the community that you come from feel that they're marginalized? Marginalized insofar as to the point where they actually think they are different and so they're treated different negatively.
So it's the opposite. It's the difference that caused the marginalization. It's when, you see, you can be different, but the moment that is used to not give you what you deserve, that's when it becomes a problem. Why do I feel I am marginalized? Because of the access to social amenities. I don't have access to social amenities as much as in other places in the country.
So would you say, you mentioned the government and you put it at the doorstep of the national government. Would you say it's a national government problem or is it a leadership problem? Because for as long as Kenya has been independent, the coast has also had representatives like other parts of the country. And unfortunately for our country, development as we call it, was always related directly to the leadership. We talk about leadership bringing development. So is it that the leaders whom the coast have had, are they the ones who have failed to bring development, or is it the national government that has failed to bring development?
It's a combination of both.
Yes.
Because there were also limited opportunities for the people of the coast in certain spaces. And the people who can relate to this to a certain extent is the people of northwest Kenya, Turkana, and those sides. Is that, one, the national government did not do their best to make sure everybody got what they deserved. And at the same time, the people, blame goes to the leaders of the coast. They did not fight as much as they did. As you say, the proverb you started with today, what did you say? About the hills and the shadows and the nights.
And the rulers.
And the rulers.
Speaking the same.
It gets to a certain point, they become the same. And they do the same things. But, you see, if you have two people in power fighting for your rights, and you're fighting against people who have 10, 20, 30 people in power, obviously, it will not be the same. You need more voices, and you can only push so much.
Let me ask this question. It's a sensitive one, but I'm going to ask it. If you look at what you've just mentioned, a lot of it then boils down to people who had access to formal secular education, as was introduced in this country by the missionaries or the colonialists.
Yes.
Now, would you say that the coast were disproportionately disadvantaged when it came to the provision of this educational system?
You're saying it. That's exactly what it is. And the problem with the coast, or the problem with Kenya, most of our problems start colonial times. When people or places that have thrived the most are the places where there were social amenities that were designed to benefit the colonizer. That's where the best schools were. That's where the hospitals were built. And if you look at the coast, because one, it was part of Zanzibar at that particular point. So their things were being sorted by Zanzibar, or our things. And at the same time, the Mzungu did not want to stay in the coast. It was too hot. They did not. So when they left, other places of the country ended up benefiting by inheriting the systems that the Mzungu had put in place. But now there was nothing there. The systems that were put in place were those by Zanzibar or the fallen Swahili city-states that were there. And when Kenya became a country, that was now irrelevant. Your madrasas, Kiswahili was written in Arabic scripts. Now Kiswahili is written in Latin script. All those things stopped to matter because now you people, please come join Kenya. We are now part of this. But the amenities, the systems, the people of the coast were now supposed to ascribe to the systems of the rest of the country, whereby they had been spending centuries with a different type of system of governance.
What would have been better? What would have worked? If you're looking at people who operated in a certain way, had a totally different system of government, culturally they were totally different, and then now being asked to be part of another entity, another sovereign state, right? What would have been a better way of going about this?
It would have been a mix and match. Adapting what is best for them and keeping what is needed by them.
Within the boundaries of of a sovereign state.
Yes, and to a certain extent, it is what the counties are doing. It's what the Majimbo was about, to a certain extent, because different regions have different needs. And so, for example, the education system. If you look at the coast, people there, the Muslims in the coast are going through two parallel systems of education at the same time, right? For years, whereby one, you're studying Islam, because that's what you need to know, your religion, and it's a way of life. So how best that would benefit you. And on the other side, you're studying a formal system of education. For a long time, the two were not put side by side. The two existed separately. But now, in the last 10 years, a place like Nairobi, which has happened more, they're now integrated schools where they have combined the two systems. And children are not waking up at 5 a.m. to go read the Quran and study religion, going to school at 8 a.m., coming home at 4 a.m. and going back to madrasa to learn. Now what they're doing, they have put that in the curriculum, whereby when they're teaching science, they're also teaching the science that's in the religion. When they're teaching manners, you're being taught, because in school here we learn, wash your hands, do all these things. That's also taught there. When they're being taught about the weather, we can't just talk about long rains, short rains, and things like that. The coast faces a different type of weather. So kids there need to learn about the Kusi winds, the Kaskazi winds, that in March there's more disease in the coast because of the winds. And so please wash your hands more. There are more flies in the coast at a certain time of the... Like, those things are things that we learn informally. And you only learn by living there. And so when they took away the space of learning informally and everything was formalized, but things that would benefit you for your reality are not there, then you fall.
So uniformizing the education system has worked to the disadvantage of various people. I can imagine then the same way things that happen in other parts of the country would be different from those that happen elsewhere. So making it all uniform does not factor in what should be happening, should really be a focus. But should that really be in the syllabus, or should it be given side by side with the syllabus?
There should be space in the syllabus for that. It's not fair, and that's why we're in this county system. Having a central system of governance for a country that is diverse, it does not work.
Do I understand you to be saying that the county system doesn't work?
No. The reason why we have the county system is because the other system did not work.
You see, I'm going back to what I'd asked earlier on, the leadership issue, whether it's at a local level or whether it's at a national level. Okay? I'm leaving religion out of the discussion for the time being. Okay? If you have an issue that is pertinent to your particular region, who should champion it?
The leaders.
Yes. And have they championed it? That's the question I'm asking. The leadership that the coast has had, have people come out? Have you seen people coming out? The example I'm going to give is one Wangare Maathai, okay? Came out, talked about the environment, didn't stop talking about the environment, never stopped talking about the environment. She paid a steep price for it, but she never stopped talking about it. I myself was to witness something very strange. I was at Makutano, that's in Muranga. I'd gone for the funeral of the father of a friend. And we were standing and we were looking at an area lush with trees. And I was talking to the native from there, somebody I knew, somebody with whom we had business dealings for a long time. And he told me, by the way, when I was growing up as a child, he's my contemporary, this place was semi-arid. I said, really? He said, yes. Because of Wangare's push, what you're seeing now, I saw it in my lifetime. So that's the question I'm asking. Who are the people who have championed this cause, this particular narrative for the coastal people?
The people were there at some point. And in the LegCo, what's his name? Sharif Nasir. This is the other thing. People end up changing at some point. And people end up going for their own benefits. Sharif Nasir, when they formed the IPK in 1992, there were people championing these things. And the issue is, there is not one as much back, there's
no continuity.
There's no continuity, and the challenge is numbers. Yes, Wangari Maathai did it, and she got the support.
She's an outlier.
Yes.
That's why she even was recognized globally. She's an outlier, probably. And maybe you could even argue and say, these things that our friend Gadara keeps talking about, that system, the colonial system that was inherited, that is supposed to have a top-down approach, an only one-way approach. If you think about at independence with the Kadu and the Ronald Ngalas and the others talking about, let's also champion the issues of the marginalized, that was the issue of the coast at hand.
You know, Eric,
And then you can see now those other leaders that keep popping out here and there, IPK coming out, other leaders who come out, and then the system sort of comes in and suppresses them. Maybe it's a system issue.
Eric, let's take this discussion out to the coast just for purposes of perspective, all right? When Jomo Kenyatta passed away and Daniel Arap Moi became president, there are those within the community of Central Kenya who felt they were now being marginalized. When Jaramogi Oginga Odinga stopped being the vice president of Kenya, there are those who within the community where Jaramogi came from who said they were being marginalized. And they would give you examples and said, these things don't happen because the government has stopped them from happening. Now, I am not saying that marginalization is just a perception. In many ways, it is a reality, and it is true. The national government often has a hand in that so-called marginalization. But what am I saying? I'm saying, if you talk about the national government, but there isn't evidence of continuity as to people who champion causes that are particular and peculiar to you, then those causes will remain unattended to. Why am I saying this? If you look at the coast and the so-called 10-mile strip, do you know why, for instance, Zanzibar was considered a headquarter? It's because the Swahili community was supposed to have colonized Oman. If you look at the history, not the other way around, as people seem to think. Yes, it was a vibrant community. It wasn't just some community. No, it was a very vibrant community. And that is why even that sultan would come to Zanzibar. That's why Zanzibar was where it was. But if, you know the term affirmative action, if there aren't people who understand the need for it to be a continuum for the benefit of the larger population of people, then unfortunately, the marginalization you'll speak of becomes the norm.
Because of lack of
Yes.
sustained pushback
Yes.
and leadership.
Central Kenya is seen as an entrepreneur. The people that are seen as entrepreneurial, they were the first people in this country to actually start what you call independent schools. Why? They had a big beef with the missionary schools. The things they're being told what to do, they figured, okay, we don't need to do what you're doing. We'll start our own. It came at a cost. But they took those steps.
But at the same time, how can you fight for... Because now, if you look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the basic needs are not even covered. You know, even fighting for human rights, fighting for all these things we see people doing and pushing, you have to get to a certain level where the basics are covered, and now you have the energy to push for more. So will I spend my energy looking for a hospital? Like, we're spending so much energy looking for healthcare, looking for quality education. Going that far, we're just like, you know what? Once watoto wetu watasoma, we'll be able to sort that out. But if you don't even have that, if you're already behind, it's a race, you're already behind, and you do need a couple of people ahead to fight for it, and everybody is at the back. How does it go?
So we're saying that there are basic things that are needed and necessary. So if anybody was to come about and start to champion anything in terms of pushing for certain things to be established in these regions, you're saying the basic things need to be taken care of first.
Yes.
So this cry that we hear about areas whereby people just don't even have the basics, food, healthcare, proper shelter, infrastructure, if those things are dealt with first so that people have some kind of sustenance to go on, do you think then we will now be able to say, okay, people have a little bit of energy to say, okay, first of all, if we've gotten one step, then we can move to the next.
Emancipation will begin. Let's go to the phone lines. John is calling in from Mombasa and he'd like to contribute to this. John, good morning.
Morning, Eric.
How are you today?
Very fine. How is CT and Ndu?
We are very well, thank you,
John.
sir.
And our guest, Nasra.
I'm good.
Now, I've been listening Mombasa joto mingi.
Kawaida.
Ndo tumerauka.
All right.
Now, I've been listening to the conversation this morning, and As for me, I'm born and bred in Mombasa, and I'm not a Mijikenda. I'm a Kikuyu, born and bred in Mombasa. And if I look at the leadership of the Mombasa leaders, as how Eric was talking, not Eric, City was talking about the initiative that Wangari Maathai took. We had a leader like Karisa Maitha, who came up with the idea with the Mnazi sellers, the Kilifi area and all that. And he made sure that the Mijikenda people are not being disturbed when they are producing the Mnazi. And as we speak right now, Mnazi is being sold, isn't it? So he fought for the Mijikenda people. The other thing, when we talk about the Muslim being marginalized, to me, I don't think they're being marginalized, because the coast area is large. As City was saying, the biggest population of Muslims is on the lower side. That is Lamu. But when you come on this other side of Kilifi, going all the way to, mostly are Christians. You see? And they are mixed races. Like in Mombasa, you find they're mixed. So, to me, in my opinion, I don't think the Muslim community is being marginalized.
Okay.
John, if I may ask, if we were to say they were marginalized, what would you need to see to indicate that they were marginalized? Because you've said, yes, they are not marginalized. So, what would happen for you to understand that they were marginalized?
One, you see, when the mosques, we'd start fighting the mosques. The schools that they call the madrasas, we start saying that now, in the system that we're learning right, the kids are learning right now, the CIRE education is still there. So why should we bring another integrated system while the same students are studying IRE? Get, because now the same Islamic religion that we used to study way back still carried the same messages that the integrated schools are carrying.
Okay. Let's hear from Samir also, who's calling in from Lamu, and then we'll get the responses from Nasra. Samir, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Salama kabisa.
Yeah, I think, first of all, this is a great topic. Thank you so much. For me, what I have to say as somebody from the coast, especially coming from Lamu, which is kind of like a marginalized, is it's really hard for somebody to give specific marginalization of the present when you're talking about 100 years, because this is kind of accumulated. And I like what Cici said, that sometimes marginalization becomes the norm, but you don't even know the difference. So I'm not surprised that John can't see marginalization, because it's become the norm. And what I say about the norm is that, for example, land in the coast. Land in the coast used to be considered crown land, meaning that in order for you to get a title deed anywhere in the coast, you have to get permission from, the Queen, who is represented by the governor and the Commission of Land in Nairobi. How is a pauper 100 years ago from the coast, let's say my grandmother, supposed to get title deed for her land? She couldn't. And so despite where I'm from, we have, my great-great-great-great-grandfather, we have ruins that date back to the 8th century, saying that this is my land. My grandmother could not get a title until 2010 for her land when we had the new constitution. And so that's so the norm that for somebody like John, it's like there's no marginalization. Because it's become, the Ministry of Land is so corrupt, that's normal. No, it's not normal.
Yeah.
And for us in the coast, it's only the 2010 constitution that now gave power to the county government to be able to do land planning, to be able to, decide who settles on which land. Whereas compared, and I'll speak specifically to Lamu, when compared to what we had during the Moi government and the Kenyatta government. Some of the Kibaki, but not so much. More of Moi and Kenyatta is that you have a settlement scheme where you're supposed to have, 30% ratio of foreign to non-locals, 70% ratio of locals getting titles. Instead, you have the opposite.
Yep.
And, we have documents to show that. But then you present this to the PJRC, nothing is done. You get told, get over it, that's the past, let's move on. So marginalization has become the norm. And, going back to religion, asking for people from the coast to, you're doing IRE and, come on, IRE is in class and you should move on. There's a difference between the two is that Islam is a way of life. It's tied to my language. The Swahili language, the way we do our wedding, it's not a colonial thing. It's actually part of my culture. And so even IRE 2 hours per week will no way teach me everything I need to life. And so the forceful centralization of our education system, we cannot deny what it has done to the coastal community. So somebody who doesn't ascribe to the Islamic faith might say, well, that's IRE, let's go on.
Yeah.
But not realizing that 50 years ago, when we had a forced centralization of the education system, that my father could no longer speak his language into the classroom, could no longer practice his faith in the classroom, and that has affected me.
So it's a
going to affect
historical
my
side.
kids, and it's become the norm.
Thank you very much,
it's historical.
Samir.
It's a cycle. And thank you.
Thank you very much. At 4 minutes to 8 o'clock, let's take a break now on KTN Home, and then conversation continues right here on Spice FM. KTN Home, don't go far away because you're just taking a break, and then come back and join the conversation. Our guest host today is Nasra Omar Bwana, digital curator, researcher, and author. She's very passionate about the issues of coastal marginalization of the coastal part of Kenya, especially looking at it from that historical perspective.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
We still have somebody else on the line. This is Hussein Mohammed from Isiolo. Hussein, good morning.
Good morning. How's everybody?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Fine, thank you.
I'm calling from Isiolo.
Yes.
I just wanted to say hi to Madam Nasra. I think her dad used to work with the Kenya Museum. I don't know whether the names are just similarity.
Yes.
Now, yeah, exactly. He was a very senior person in Kenya, in Museum Kenya. Now, I wanted to say here is the issue of marginalization is so deep integrated in this country, and it was deliberately done by the leadership after we got independence. British played a role, Christianity played a role where they developed some other parts of the country, and they felt maybe Islamic religion was kind of religion which is, very strong culturally. By the way, Kenyans did not understand. I'm first a Muslim before even calling myself a Kenyan. You see, so that is very, very important. We must know how strong we are as far as our faith is concerned. So marginalization started, especially me, I'm from Isiolo, northern frontier districts, including Lamu by then. And the first president of this country, when he was putting the foundation of this country, I think the foundation was not put right. Because, for example, one thing, people were moved from a country to Lamu for settlement. Why not move people from Lamu or coast to up country where there were white settlers' farms which were being taken over by our government? So the issue of marginalization is so deep integrated, and up to now it's the leadership. I think as we go along for many years to come.
Whose leadership, Hussein? Is it local leadership or
leadership
national
is the
leadership?
presidency.
Okay.
Those are the people who determine in Kenya what is supposed to be done, who is supposed to be marginalized. Imagine I'm a Somali and I was given a screening card, a red card. After having an ID, I was given a screening card to be screened whether I am a Kenyan citizen, Somali Kenyan citizen. You see? So the system is the one which is creating marginalization. Otherwise, we can live among other Kenyans, among other religions, in harmony, that everybody do what he does without infringing other people's rights. but
Hussein.
it is the government.
Thank you
the
very much, Hussein.
leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.